and welcome to the Daily News Simplified, an answer to watch, why and how of newspaper reading. Today we will be analysing the Delhi edition of the Hindu newspaper dated 21st June 2019. The topics to be discussed today are reflected on your screen and the timestamping for the same has been provided in the description box below. So let's begin. This news appears on page number 3 of the Friday Review and is talking about the ancient Sanskrit theatre of Kuttiyattam. Hence, for our today's video discussion, we will be talking about Kuttiyattam, and this will become important from the perspective of your prelims under the category of History of India as well as from the perspective of GS Paper 1 under the category of Art Forms. Kuttiyattam is basically a Sanskrit theatre which is practiced in the state of Kerala, and in fact it is one of India's oldest living theatrical traditions. Kuttiyattam is also known as Kodiyattam and Kuttiyattam. Hence, do not get confused if instead of Kuttiyattam, these other two names are used. Let us now look at some of the salient features of the Kuttiyattam. As mentioned, Kuttiyattam is India's oldest living theatrical tradition, as it is believed that the Kuttiyattam originated more than 2000 years ago and additionally represents a synthesis of Sanskrit classicism with the local traditions of Kerala. Now, traditionally, Kuttiyattam was performed in Kuthampalams, which were theatres located inside the temple premises. And in fact, the Kuttiyattam was restricted only to the Brahmins or the higher caste members of the society, because logically, since Kuttiyattams were performed in temples and temples were only restricted to upper caste Hindus, hence this theatre as well was only restricted to the higher caste. But now, with the progress of time, this Kuttiyattam is open to all. Further, until the 1950s, the Kuttiyattam was performed only by men of the Chakiyar caste, women of the Nangyar caste, and the musicians used to belong to the Nambiar caste. So therefore, traditionally, the Kuttiyattam was performed by people of designated castes. Further, you should know that the prefix Kuti in Malayalam language primarily means combined or together, and Attam means acting. Therefore, the word Kuttiyattam means combined acting. So therefore, simply put, Kuttiyattam is a theatre in which several characters come together on the stage. Moving ahead, though the performance practice of Kuttiyattam broadly follows the rule of aesthetics which have been prescribed in the Natya Shastra, yet it has its own distinctive characteristics as well as features in terms of theatric conventions as well as methods of acting. Further, you should know that while the performing tradition of Sanskrit plays have ceased to exist in majority part of India, yet the continuation of this unbroken tradition of Sanskrit theatre survives in Kerala. Now, Kuttiyattam draws on plays of eminent Sanskrit dramatists such as Kalidasa, Harsha, Ashwaghosh, Bodhyana, Bhasa, Sudraka, etc. Further, Kuttiyattam has complicated gesture language. It also includes chanting and is especially famous for its exaggerated expressions of the face and the eyes. Further, in Kuttiyattam, the performers wear elaborate headdresses as well as makeup. Therefore, in Kuttiyattam, Net Abhinay, which is the eye expression, as well as the Hasta Abhinay, which is the language of gestures, are prominent. Moving ahead, as far as the musical instruments which are used in Kuttiyattam is concerned, the chief musical instrument used to accompany Kuttiyattam is the Mizavu, which is a large percussion instrument played by a person of the Nambiar caste. Further, in Kuttiyattam, the women especially play the Kuzhithalam, which is a type of a cymbal. In addition to these two, the drums also have an important symbolic significance, and even instruments like Shankh is used. Now, this news article which has appeared today especially talks about a very important aspect of the Kuttiyattam known as the Pakar Natam. This Pakar Natam basically means embodying and emoting the male and the female roles. So therefore, please remember that Pakar Natam is an aspect of Kuttiyattam in which a person embodies both the male and the female roles. In fact, today, Kapila Venu is one of the most leading performer of the Kuttiyattam currently. Further, as far as the legacy of Kuttiyattam is concerned, it is believed that Kathakali, which is a classical art form of Kerala, also emerged from Kuttiyattam. Lastly, you should know that in the year 2001, Kuttiyattam was declared as one of the UNESCO Masterpiece of Oral and Intangible Heritage of Humanity. So this is broadly what Kuttiyattam is all about. To recapitulate, please remember that it is a Sanskrit theatre of the state of Kerala. In fact, it is India's oldest living theatrical tradition. Traditionally, it was performed in Kuttumpalams, which were basically theatres inside temples. And earlier, Kuttiyattam was very restricted as far as the audience and the performers were concerned. Further, remember that Kuttiyattam follows the rules of Natya Shastra and that it has complicated gesture language, and the exaggerated expression of the face and the eyes is one of its most prominent features. Further, you should remember that Mizabu and Kuzi Thalam are the main instruments accompanying Kuttiyattam, and additionally also remember about the aspect of the Pakar Natam, in which an artist embodies and emotes both male and female roles. And lastly, please remember that it is a UNESCO masterpiece of oral and intangible heritage of humanity. So with this, let's move on to our next news. This news is an editorial appearing on page number 10 and is basically talking about the decision of the various central banks of the world wherein they have decided to stop the increase in the interest rates. Now this discussion of ours will fall under GS paper 3 under the category of issues related to economy. Now as mentioned, the context of this article is that central banks all across the globe are giving up their policy of normalization of interest rates. Now in this article, the author is talking about the concerns and challenges related to this giving up of policy of normalization of interest rates. Hence, before we can discuss the concerns and challenges, we first need to understand the background of this news. That is to say, what exactly was the normalization of interest rates. Now this entire story started with the 2008 financial crisis. Because in order to combat the 2008 global economic recession, the developed countries of the world started to follow unconventional monetary policy. A good example of the unconventional monetary policy would be the zero interest rate policy and the negative interest rate policy. Now the zero interest rate policy was a policy which was followed by the US Federal Bank. Under this policy, the US Federal Bank provided loans at almost 0% of almost 0.25% to the normal banks. And this eventually led to lower rate of interest on the loans. Hence the policy by the USA in which the federal banks provided loans at very minimal or almost negligible zero interest rate to the normal banks is known as the zero interest rate policy. The second is the negative interest rate policy. Now usually under the normal monetary policy, what happens is that the normal banks keep their surplus reserves with the central banks, and in turn the central banks gives these normal banks a certain interest rate on such surplus reserves. But under the negative interest rate policy, this gets reversed. Because under the negative interest rate policy, the normal banks have to pay interest to the central banks if they want to park their excess reserves with the central bank. So here, as the name suggests, the banks will have to now pay interest to the central banks and not vice versa. Hence, it is known as the negative interest rate policy. So then what happened is that once such unconventional monetary policies were followed, over a period of time, the economy picked up momentum. And since now there was a growth in momentum, countries such as the USA tried to normalize their monetary policy stance. Hence now therefore, they started to increase the interest rate. So hence normalization of monetary policy means that the central banks have started to increase their interest rates. So let's say for example, where earlier the USA Federal Bank was providing loan at 0.25% under the zero interest rate policy, it now started to increase the interest rate to almost 2 to 2.5% under the normalization of the monetary policy. But then a lot of economists have argued that this normalization of monetary policy stance has had an adverse impact on the economy because there have been signs of a slowdown in the GDP as well as a decrease in the job creation. So currently, now such a situation is created where due to the fears of an economic slowdown as well as the tensions which has been created due to the ongoing trade wars, the various central banks of the world, they have decided to stop the increase in the interest rate. Because now they again want to pump up their economy so that their economies can come out of the economic slowdown. Moving ahead, the author has cited certain concerns and challenges with respect to this topping of increase in the interest rate. The first challenge, according to author, is that the economists will find it difficult to adopt unconventional monetary policies as they have very high debt levels. For example, the USA currently has a debt level of 105%, Japan has of 250%, etc. So since these countries already have a very high debt levels, it is very difficult for them to dole out money at such low interest rate. Secondly, the author feels that the autonomy of the central banks today is in danger or threat because of the mounting political pressure on these central banks to reduce the policy rate or the interest rates. Hence, the author feels that if the autonomy of the central banks is jeopardized, then a smooth and effective monetary policy will not be followed. Lastly, the author says that it is very difficult to ascertain that if a decrease or fall in the interest rate will actually lead to a boost in the economic growth. Lastly, as way forward, it is said that the countries should explore other unconventional policies like the helicopter money. Now, helicopter money was proposed by Milton Friedman and is used when the zero interest rate policy and the negative interest rate policy fail to boost the economy. Under this helicopter money, the government prints currency notes and then distributes these currency notes freely amongst its population. That is to say, currency notes are given to the people free of cost. Now, this helicopter money is different from the zero interest rate policy and the negative interest rate policy because under the latter, people though are getting loans at cheaper rate, yet this increases the debt liability. But in helicopter money, since people receive money absolutely free of cost, it does not create any kind of liability. Hence, it is suggested that helicopter money can be used as one of the unconventional monetary policy. And lastly, the author says that there is a need to bring about structural reforms in order to tackle the present slowdown. Because the slowdown today is not just because of the external factors, but is also due to a lot of structural infirmities which exist in the economies. Therefore, it is very important that the government tries to address the actual root cause of the problem and bring about structural reforms. So with this, let's move on to our next news. The next topic which we'll be talking about appears as an advertisement on page number 1, and it talks about the Kaleshwaram lift irrigation project. Now, the Kaleshwaram lift irrigation project is important from the perspective of prelims, both in the category of geography and economic development. Further, even from GS paper 3, this project can find relevance under the topic of different types of irrigation and irrigation system storage. Now, the Kaleshwaram lift irrigation project is located on river Godavari in the state of Telangana and has been envisaged to make Telangana drought proof. Now, Kaleshwaram is a town on the Godavari right bank, and it is at Kaleshwaram that the largest tributary Pranhita meets Godavari. Hence, at Kaleshwaram, Pranhita, when it merges with Godavari, brings large quantity of water, and it is here that this large quantity of water is proposed to be utilized for the benefit of Telangana. Now, this project proposes to lift about 180,000 million cubic feet of water. This project includes the construction of various barrages, high-speed pumps, etc. to transport water upstream for providing irrigation. Besides this project also involves the construction of a network of storage dams, canals, series of tunnels, etc. in order to transport water across northern Telangana. Further, you should know that this KLIP is a redesigned version of the Pranhita Chevla lift irrigation project, which was proposed in the year 2007 by the then undivided Andhra Pradesh government. Now, under this project, the waters of Godavari will be tapped by using reverse pumping and storage. Now, it is hoped that the KLIP will change the face and fate of Telangana, particularly its northern part. The main benefit is that this project will directly benefit farmers by improving irrigation and various allied activities. The project's benefit include increased agricultural yield, increasing of crop intensity and the area, agricultural diversification, commercial crop improvement, etc. Further, this project will supply water to thousands of industries in the state for the industrial usage. This project will also provide drinking water, especially to the cities of Hyderabad and Sikandrabad and to various other villages. Therefore, it is believed that this project will support Mission Kakatiya and Mission Bhagirathi, both of which are designed to provide drinking water to villages. Further, this project also offers opportunity to harness the hydel power. Therefore, in totality, this project will give assurance for employment, crop production, food security, poverty eradication, as well as improvement in the socio-economic condition of the farmers and villages in Telangana. Moving ahead, you should know that after its completion, this project will have the longest tunnel carrying water in Asia, because the 81-kilometer long tunnel built between Yellampalli Barrage and Malana Sagar Reservoir will be the longest tunnel to carry water in Asia after completion. Lastly, you should know that this project is the costliest irrigation project ever undertaken by any state in India. Now, having discussed the salient features of this project as well as its benefit, let us now see what exactly do we mean by a lift irrigation project and a few other details about the river Godavari. Now, when the main source of water is at a lower level and the area where the water needs to be supplied is at a higher level, then in that case, water cannot be transported by natural flow. And it is in this situation that water is lifted with the help of pumps rather than being transported by its natural flow. So therefore, whenever water is supplied through some mechanical means, such as by lifting it with pumps, then it is known as lift irrigation. And in lift irrigation, pumps are used to lift the water from canals or rivers at a lower level and transport them to area at a higher level for purposes of irrigation. Now, the advantages of lift irrigation is that firstly, lift irrigation has made irrigation possible even at higher levels. Secondly, in lift irrigation, the water loss is comparatively less. Thirdly, in lift irrigation, less manpower is used. Now, since this project is on the river Godavari, let us very briefly know a few details about Godavari. Now, Godavari, also known as Dakshin Ganga, is the second largest river in India after Ganga. In fact, in southern India, Godavari is the largest river. Now, the river Godavari originates at Triambakeshwar near the Nasik district in Maharashtra. The drainage basin of Godavari includes the state of Maharashtra, parts of Telangana, especially northern Telangana, Chhattisgarh, Odisha, Andhra Pradesh, and even some smaller parts of Madhya Pradesh and Karnataka. Now, the Godavari basin is bounded by the Satmala Hills, the Ajanta Range, as well as the Mahadev Hills on the north, and by the Eastern Ghats on the south and the eastern sides, and obviously by the Western Ghats in the western side. Now, as far as the main tributaries of Godavari is concerned, Pranhita, which is a left bank tributary of Godavari, is its largest tributary, whereas Manjira or Manjira, which is a right bank tributary, is its longest tributary. In addition to these two, other tributaries include Indravati, Sabari, Manayar, Purna, etc. As far as the projects on Godavari river is concerned, the important one of them is the Gangpur Dam, Jayakwadi Dam, Sri Ram Sagar project, as well as the Polavaram Dam. So this was all for this news article. Let us move on to our next discussion. This news appears on page number 22 and is stating that the World Health Organization has come out with new guidelines which specify which antibiotics should be used in which manner. So therefore, in this discussion today, we will first be talking about what is antimicrobial resistance or AMR, and then we'll be looking at the guidelines given out by WHO. Now, this entire topic will become important from the perspective of GS paper 3 under the category of science. Now, antimicrobial resistance or AMR is the ability of a microbe to resist the effects of a medicine which was earlier effective in treating it. So therefore, when a microbe develops resistance to an antibiotic or a medicine which was earlier effective in treating or killing that microbe, that is known as antimicrobial resistance or antibiotic resistance. So we will see how this AMR spreads with the help of this diagram. So as you will see here, antibiotic resistance happens when the bacteria or the microbe change and become resistant to antibiotics used to treat the infections they cause. So now what happens? We have certain kind of antibiotics used to treat infections caused by various kind of microbes. Now these antibiotics are used in the agricultural industries and are especially given to the food producing animals and crops. Further, antibiotics are also given to patients to treat various kind of infections. Now what happens is that over a period of time, both animals and human develop drug resistance bacteria in their gut. Now when an animal develops a drug resistance bacteria, this drug resistant bacteria then reaches the humans also through the food or the environment which they are consuming, or even through direct human animal contact. Then from the food and the environment, this drug resistant bacteria spreads to the general public. And even for the human beings, they also develop drug resistance bacteria. Now when human beings attend hospitals or clinics, this drug resistant bacteria spreads to other patients as well through poor hygiene or unclean facilities. Thus, throughout this process, drug resistant bacteria is able to spread to the general public, whereby a lot of antibiotics become inefficient when it comes to treating the infections caused by the bacteria. Now when it comes to what is the cause or reasons for antimicrobial resistance, the first is the natural resistance and second is through genetic mutation. Now resistance can appear spontaneously because of some random mutation in the microbe, or it can appear gradually over a period of time, where the major cause for development of such a resistance is because of the misuse of antibiotics. By misuse we mean that people unnecessarily keep on taking antibiotics even when it is not required, and secondly, in situations where the antibiotics are required, people do not complete the full dosage of antibiotics. Many times you would have also heard that a doctor prescribes that you should take either 3 or 5 days of medication of antibiotic, and regardless whether you feel better or not, you should complete the full cycle, because stopping antibiotic in between causes the bacteria to develop resistance to that antibiotic. In addition to this, now of late there has been an increase in the use of antibiotics. One of the major reasons is that antibiotics are easily available to the people over the counter itself, where people go and buy antibiotics at their whims and fancies without even a doctor's prescription. Therefore, even the uncontrolled sales of antibiotics is one of the major reasons for increase in the antibiotic and the subsequent increase in AMR. Now coming to the guideline given by the WHO. The WHO has developed a new tool known as the AWARE tool. Now under this AWARE tool, WHO has categorized various antibiotics into 3 categories, namely Axis, Watch and Reserve. Further, the WHO has specified which antibiotics to use for the most common and serious infections, which antibiotics should be available at all times in the healthcare system, as well as which antibiotics must be used very sparingly or be used only as a last resort. Now, as per the new guidelines, the WHO aims to increase the proportion of the global consumption of antibiotics falling in the Axis category to almost 60%. The reason is that antibiotics falling in the Axis category has a lower risk of resistance because these antibiotics are narrow spectrum antibiotics. That is to say, they target a specific microorganism rather than targeting several or a lot of microorganisms. Further, the antibiotics under the Axis category are less costly because they are available in generic formulations. Secondly, the WHO wants to reduce the use of antibiotics which fall under the Watch and the Reserve category, because these are the antibiotics which are most at the risk of resistance. Further, you should know that antimicrobial resistance is a global health and development threat that continues to escalate globally. In fact, it is estimated that more than 50% of antibiotics in majority of countries are used inappropriately. That is to say, they are used to treat viruses when in reality they can only treat bacterial infections. or a wrong antibiotic is used, or the antibiotic course is not completed fully. Hence, all of these factors are contributing to the spread of antimicrobial resistance. Lastly, you should know that the Government of India too has taken various steps in order to curb antimicrobial resistance. The foremost of them is the Red Line campaign. Now, in this Red Line campaign, what the government has done is that the government now puts a broad red vertical line on various medicines in order to make people aware that such medicines with red lines should not be used without a doctor's prescription. Hence, this Red Line campaign has been brought in to check the irrational use of antibiotics so that the users can also differentiate these antibiotics from other drugs. Hence, it is thought that this campaign will discourage unnecessarily prescription and over-the-counter sale of antibiotics, which is one of the leading cause of drug resistance. In addition to the Red Line campaign, the Government of India's Swachh Bharat Abhiyan has also contributed significantly because the Swachh Bharat Abhiyan has improved the hygiene and sanitation, and this in turn has reduced the environmental spread of lot of microbes and pathogens. Lastly, considering the fact that vaccination is equally important public health measure, the government has started Mission Indradhanush, wherein it wants to increase the routine immunization coverage to almost 90%. So this was basically what the WHO guidelines were all about. In case you want to have more information on antimicrobial resistance, you can refer to the DNS dated 30th April 2019. In this DNS, the topic of AMR has been covered exhaustively. So with this, let's move on to our next news. This next news appears on page number 1 and is in the context of the President's address. Now in our discussion today, we'll be talking about the President's special address as well as the motion of thanks. And then in the PDF, we have provided the summary of the speech of the President. Now this entire topic will fall under the category of polity. Now the special address by the President has been provided for under Article 87 of the Indian Constitution. Article 87 says that at the commencement of firstly, the first session after each general election of the House of the People, as well as at the commencement of the first session of each year, the President of India shall address both the houses of the Parliament assembled together and inform the Parliament of the causes of such a summon. So here you need to remember that at two occasions there is a special address by the President. The first occasion is the first session after the Lok Sabha general election, and the second occasion is the first session of each year, that is every financial year. And at both these occasions, the President calls for a joint sitting of both the houses. Moving ahead, Clause 2 of Article 87 says that provision shall be made by the rules regulating the procedure of either house for the allotment of time for discussion of the matter referred to in such an address. Therefore, it is clearly stated that whatever has been discussed in the President's special address has to be given a certain time for the discussion in both the houses. Now, at the special address, the government through the President's address outlines its various policies, priorities as well as the government programs. Further, the address also highlights the steps taken by the government from the previous year and spells out the priorities for the upcoming year. Now, this address of the President corresponds to his speech from the throne in Britain, and it is discussed in both the houses of the Parliament on a motion known as the motion of thanks. At the end of the discussion, this motion is put to vote, wherein it is the ruling party which moves this motion. Now, if the government loses this motion of thanks, then the government collapses or is defeated. Therefore, voting on the motion of thanks becomes very critical, especially for a minority government. Further, you should know that this motion of thanks has to be passed individually in both the houses. Further, this motion of thanks has not been mentioned in the Constitution of India, but has rather been provided in the rules and procedures of the conduct of the Lok Sabha or the Rajya Sabha respectively, considering whichever house this motion of thanks is put to vote. Now in the PDF you will find a summary of the President's speech. The summary is rather factual in nature, but nonetheless is very important if one wants to get an holistic perspective of what were the government policy and various programs that has been launched by the government and what the government has in mind for the coming time. Now, since this is very factual in nature, we will not be discussing it here, but it has been provided for in the PDF. You can have a look at it from there. So with this, let's move on to our next news. This next news appears on page number 9, and in this news, the National Human Rights Commission of India has expressed its serious concern about the poor state of public health infrastructure in the country and has taken a suo motu cognizance of the loss of the human lives in various parts of the country in the recent times. Now, NHRC is important from the perspective of polity, both from prelims as well as from the perspective of GS paper 2. Now, the National Human Rights Commission was established in the year 1993 through the Protection of the Human Rights Act. Hence, you should know that the National Human Rights Commission is a statutory body and not a constitutional body. As far as the appointment of the members is concerned, the members of the National Human Rights Commission are appointed by the President on the recommendation of a selection committee. The selection committee consists of the Prime Minister as the chairperson, the Union Home Minister, the leader of opposition of both the houses, Speaker of the Lok Sabha, as well as the Deputy Chairman of the Rajya Sabha. Further, as far as the composition of the NHRC is concerned, the NHRC will have a chairperson who has been a Chief Justice of the Supreme Court of India. Further, it will have one member who is or has been a judge of the Supreme Court of India. Third, it will have one member who is or has been the Chief Justice of a High Court, and 2 other members who shall be appointed from amongst the person who have knowledge or practical experience in matters related to human rights. Further, please keep in mind that the chairperson of the National Commissions for Minorities, the National Commission for the Scheduled Castes, the National Commission for the Scheduled Tribes, and the National Commission for the Women shall be deemed to be the ex officio members of the National Commission of the Human Rights. Further, as far as the term of office is concerned, the chairperson shall hold the office for a term of 5 years or until he attains the age of 70, and a member shall hold the office again for the term of 5 years or until he attains the age of 70. Further, you should know that a member shall be eligible for reappointment for another term of 5 years. Moving ahead, you should know that on ceasing to hold an office, a chairperson or a member of the National Human Rights Commission will not be eligible for further employment under the Government of India or any government of the state. Hence, there is a bar on appointment on the members and chairperson of the NHRC. Further, as far as the removal is concerned, a member or the chairperson can be removed only on the charge of proved misbehavior and incapacity if it is proved by an inquiry conducted by a Supreme Court judge. Lastly, as far as the functions of the NHRC is concerned, NHRC looks into the violation of human rights, reviews the safeguard for protection of human rights, as well as recommend measures for their effective implementation. It studies treaties as well as other international instruments on human rights and makes suitable recommendations to the Government of India. Further, it also undertakes spreading of human rights literacy as well as encourages the effort of NGOs and other institutions working in the field of human rights. More information about the NHRC has been provided for in the PDF. With this, let's move on to our practice questions. Now, based on today's discussion, here is the first set of your prelims practice question. Please pause the video and we'll discuss the answer after 5 seconds. Question number 1 is in relation to Kuttiyattam. The first statement, it's a Sanskrit theatre from the state of Tamil Nadu. This is incorrect. It is a Sanskrit theatre from the state of Kerala. Second, Parkarnatam is one of its important aspects. This is a correct statement. Parkarnatam is an aspect of Kuttiyattam that involves embodying and emoting male and female roles. Third, it was traditionally performed at Kuttampalams or temple theatres. This is also correct. Hence, the right answer to this question becomes B, 2 and 3 only. Question number 2 reads, consider the following statements. Number 1, President gives a special address only at the first session after the general election to the House of the People. Now, this is incorrect. As per Article 87, the President gives a special address to both the Houses of the Parliament, both at the first session after the general election to the House of People, as well as at the first session of every year. Second, defeat of motion of thanks leads to the fall of the government. Now this is correct. Hence the right answer is B, 2 only. Now here is the second set of prelims practice question. Please again pause the video and solve this. We'll discuss the answer after 5 seconds. Question number 3 is in relation to National Human Rights Commission. The first statement, it is a statutory body. This is correct. The National Human Rights Commission was established in the year 1993 under the Protection of Human Rights Act. B, its members are removed on grounds of proved misbehavior and incapacity. This is also correct. Its members are removed after an inquiry by the Supreme Court judge proves their misbehavior or incapacity. C, its members are eligible to be appointed as the governor of a state. Now this statement is correct and is a trick question. Now though it has been provided that the members or the chairperson of the National Human Rights Commission are not eligible to be appointed under the Government of India or the state once they cease to hold the office, but the office of the governor, as per a Supreme Court ruling, is not considered as an office under the Government of India. Hence, since governor is not considered as an office under the Government of India, therefore a member or a chairperson of NHRC is eligible to be appointed as a governor of a state. So the right answer to this question becomes D, 1, 2 and 3. Question number 4 is in respect with Kaleshwaram project. The first statement reads, it is located on river Godavari. Now this is correct. Second, it is India's largest lift irrigation project. This is also correct. Third, it is located in the state of Maharashtra. This is incorrect. It is not located in Maharashtra but is located in the state of Telangana. Therefore, the right answer to this question is A, 1 and 2 only. With this, we come to an end for today's discussion. Let's move to the question for the day.